Welcome into another episode of Campus to Cane's premier recruiting podcast, The Official. I'm Chris Moxley. I'm filling in for Alfred tonight as he searches for the easy squeeze purple ketchup that was so popular in the early 2000s. I'm joined by recruiting gurus and your regular hosts, David at Solving Football and Matt, big wide receiver guy. This episode of The Official, we're talking player traits, how those specific traits translate to the NFL and to draft capital, a handful of decommitments, and a bunch of really new and interesting commitments. Let's get started. So the first thing I brought up at the beginning was we want to talk about player traits. And I've seen a little bit of this because, I've seen the show sheet. This is something that, Matt, you've been working on for a little while now. And I don't know much about it. So why don't you share kind of what you've discovered and what what traits are translated to draft capital and NFL success?
Yeah, so first up here is the running backs. And I just want to explain the process here real quick. So we got the obvious speed, burst, agility, power, size. Speed is anything from 100-meter times to 40-yard dash times, miles per hour. Burst is anything jumping, so in track, the long jump, triple jump, high jump, and then combine stuff, the vertical and broad. Agility is just the standard shuttle and three cone because we don't have any track stuff with that. Power is combine bench reps or pro day bench reps, and then any maximum lifting stats too. And also with track, they have the discus and shot put. And then size is my combination of length, so it takes either the highest of their height, their wingspan, their arm length, and then it combines that with their BMI. So just a quick explanation there to get that out of the way. And I was kind of surprised with these results. We're looking at the running backs here first. The wide receivers are a bit more interesting, I think. But with the running backs, it's clear, this is to draft capital. So, and this is looking at from any level, really, whether it be their recruits, their incoming NFL prospects. And it shows what the NFL is really looking at these positions. So obviously speed, everyone loves it. Everyone knows the NFL loves it. It takes up a big part of the pie chart here. But compared to the wide receivers, at least, this is a much more balanced, layout between the size, burst, and agility. They kind of want, more well-rounded guys and less specialists, I would say. And the size part's a little bit interesting because it's not very big, but I think most of the NFL guys are pretty big, which is why it doesn't really matter for this case. And the power, especially when you're about to see the wide receivers, but the power is pretty low. So any of the lifting stuff, it doesn't seem to matter as much to the NFL.
So for those who are watching the video, we got this on the right side of the screen, and Matt's kind of breaking it down. So the question that I have is, when you're calculating these, what is this percentage a total of? So what is the calculation that goes into 41.3% speed?
Yeah, so I was just checking the R2s for each athletic group, and then marking down that, and then using the total number to split it up into percentages.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. So that's pretty interesting.
So
speed and agility.
Just to clarify, for example, I think for our running backs, speeds has an R2 of 0.17 for NFL draft capital. Burst has an R2 of 0.116, agility 0.088, power 0.018, and then size 0.017.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So that's pretty interesting. You want to talk wide receivers, or David? Do this kind of track with what you expected as well?
I think the size part is a little bit. Can you just go a little more in depth on the size part? Because I guess I would have assumed that that would matter for a running back.
Yeah, so I think just because everybody that's going to get drafted already or is in contention to be drafted is already usually hitting that size threshold. So I don't think there's going to be as much weight to it. Like if there's more guys, more running back going into the draft that were like 170 pounds, then yeah, it would show up as having more relevance. But there's just you don't see those guys because they're not going to play running back in the NFL. So I think that's why it's showing up as it doesn't really matter that much because it's comparing guys that are like 195 to guys that are 215. Like it's in reality, it's not that big of a difference. And functionally, it's not going to be that big of a detriment to their game, I think. Or at least how the NFL sees it.
So less variance or a lower standard deviation, generally that number is going to be smaller because they're already within that defined bucket.
Yeah.
Cool. Want to talk wide receivers?
Yep. Pull it up. All right. So the big one here, obviously, as you can see, the power. There's a huge difference between the power for running backs and wide receivers. I'm not totally sure as to why yet. I think maybe it's because if you have that functional strength, they're not going to care about size as much. But I would think size at least would matter a little bit. But I guess within, like you said, with the standard deviation, within the bubble of guys who are getting drafted, it's just not that wide of a margin to really matter that much. And another thing on there is the agility is much lower than for running backs. And I think that has to do with more with the NFL is fine with wide receivers that are specialists in certain areas than with running backs where you only have one running back on the field at a time most of the time. And you want them to be able to do everything. With wide receivers, you usually have three on the field. Each of them are going to have different roles, and their athletic abilities are going to suit those roles with how the teams see them. So I think that explains why, at least why agility matters less for wide receivers. I really don't have an answer on the power. I double checked my numbers. There isn't an error in there anywhere. So I mean, it's just the NFL just like strong wide receivers, I guess. I don't really have much of an answer for that.
So the bench press matters.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's the combination of the bench press. I have a bunch of guys lifting maxes. Like in there, I have Larry Fitzgerald. He had a max bench press of 405 pounds, which is great for any position. I think one of the highest I have in the database is Trent Richardson with a 475 for running backs, which might be why it's weighed down a little bit more for running backs. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of big, strong wide receivers. So especially like if you're a guy like DK Metcalf, where your job is to be big, fast, and strong. They don't really care about how well you move in a zigzag. So that's just his role.
Yeah, I mean, you see those three buckets, right? Power, big X, like you're talking about, DK Metcalf, alpha type, agility, a dude who can operate in the slot, line up against linebackers really easily. Burst, maybe that's the flanker, the guy that you want to see, in a bunch of different roles. And every team wants speed, right? So that's pretty interesting. When you have three wide receivers in the field, they kind of fit into those buckets, generally speaking, obviously, somewhat neatly.
It's kind of interesting. I wonder if that had anything to do with Wan'Dale Robinson. Like he was a super contentious player in the last draft cycle, and I'm looking at it. He did 19 bench reps at 178 pounds. Like, so he's unbelievably strong for his size. I wonder if that played into his, the Giants being confident in taking him in the second round.
I definitely think that could have played a strong part of it, at least because they really don't want guys that are like Tavon Austin, who are like they're fast, they're quick, but they're not anything outside of that. Obviously, we were talking about the roles, but Wan'Dale can do a lot of those things that Tavon Austin can do. But on the other side of it, he's also pretty strong. He can go up and get the ball, and it's just having a more complete profile.
Yeah, that archetype of wide receiver is pretty interesting too. Like a Wan'Dale Rondale, like those players that can operate really close to the line of scrimmage and have power. Like you were talking about strength, right? Like Rondale's one of the strongest dudes at their receiver position given his size. So that's a really interesting archetype that we're seeing a lot more of that archetype be successful at the collegiate level and the NFL level. So that's definitely something that, like David said, that probably gets Wandale more recognition than you would have thought. Anything else you wanted to cover here, Matt?
No, I think that's about it. We have a lot more stuff that's going to come out eventually with this athleticism database I'm working on. At some point, I'd like to have it, publicly accessible to everybody. It's going to be something, similar to like the RAS score, except it kind of incorporates more. And we've already seen in early testing that has pretty high relevance to NFL draft capital in general. Like we're talking, I think for running backs, the R2 was over 0.2. So, and I think for tight ends, it was over 0.2 as well. So that's something we're going to try to get out eventually. But, these are numbers all based on that kind of stuff. And over, I think it's over 3,000 skill players I have in the database. So this is a pretty big sample. And I'm relatively confident about the numbers.
Yeah, this is really cool. And, if you're listening on a podcast, I definitely encourage you to check out the video because we have both pie charts up here for wide receiver and running back, and it gives you a really great look at how these are broken down outside of the conversation that we're having back and forth. Let's before we head on to commitments, decommitments, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. The Official is part of the Campus Canton family of shows. Recently, thanks to many requests, we are now on podcast. You can find us on the Campus Canton feed. If you're not watching on YouTube, like I said, you should like and subscribe anyway. If you're watching on YouTube, you better be liking and subscribing. We're expanding our reach all across YouTube. We're having multiple shows a day, anything from college fantasy to prize picks to recruiting stuff like this. There's a ton of content being put out here. It's absolutely worth your subscription. Join us on the site. Like I said, we're part of the Campus Canton family of shows, podcasts, however you want to phrase it. We have 3 different membership tiers. You can get CFF, C2C, Devi, recruiting stuff. We have really great articles. We talked about the free list last week. Super cool stuff based on some of this athleticism data that we're talking about. There's stuff, I think, for everybody who's interested in college football there. There really is. And we have ADP rankings, metrics, tools. For the price of membership, you get everything you need to succeed in any sort of college format. We also have 3 separate guides. We have one for incoming freshmen that I expect both of these fellows will contribute heavily to within the next year. We have one for Devi, recently released CFF guide, which is a great primer for the 2022 season. If you sign up for a yearly membership for the NIL tier, you get all 3 guides for free, including that membership. It's a really great deal, which results in your membership being all the perks of the other 2 for only $19.99. Awesome stuff. But before I go on and on about what we have over there, let's kick it to some commitments. Let's start with a commitment/decommitment. And that is Yazid Hines. He decommits from Penn State. He ran a 4.39 40 and then immediately goes to Georgia. What do we like Hines? Do we think he's a quality player, or is he just a speedster who got on the radar?
I think people saw the 4.39. I don't know at what camp he ran that in, but I'm pretty sure he got his Georgia offer after that. But his junior tape doesn't really stick out to me too much. He doesn't play nearly as fast as that 4.39. I don't know how legit that number is, but that's obviously super fast for a high schooler. I mean, you never really expect to see sub 4.4 for a high schooler. Like 4.6 is pretty good, at that level. So he kind of reminded me of CJ Smith from last year, a different Georgia player. So it seems like they're kind of attracted to that type of player. It's a field stretcher. Maybe it opens up the offense in a way. I don't really see an NFL player, an NFL future, and I don't know. I don't see much of a contribution maybe in a few years, but I don't love him.
Georgia's really stacking up on these straight line speed guys because they have Arian Smith, CJ Smith. Now they have Haynes. They're also probably he hasn't committed anywhere yet, but they're probably gonna get Anthony Evans, who has one of the best 100-meter times. He was on the freak list, so it's definitely an archetype they're going after, and I don't think it's really gonna pay off for them. Like none of these guys have shown that much ability to actually play wide receiver itself. And we all love athletes here. David and I obviously just made the freak list. We love these big athletic guys, but if they can't, show meaningful ability on the field, then it's just going to waste. Then they should probably just, run track instead.
Yeah, and I mean Georgia, like y'all said, Georgia's bringing in all these dudes for like the most conservative offense in the country. They aren't particularly explosive. They aren't really attempting long passes downfield. They're opening it up so Brock Bowers can operate underneath. Like, is that the goal here, or like Oscar Delpin a few years? It's very nonsensical for the system that they're running.
Yeah, it just feels like it's going to a waste at a certain extent. Because at least if these guys were playing for like a downfield system, at least where they had a quarterback that could sling it down and actually get them those deep targets, then it would make a little more sense. But it's just a waste, really. They do have Morissette though, which is nice. He doesn't fit into that category.
Any I mean, I guess we think that he's behind CJ Smith for now, right? I mean, we have no reason to think otherwise, especially if they're comparable. I don't know when he gets on the field, especially they're bringing in a lot of guys. Next dude, another wide receiver, 4-star, committed to Missouri, Joshua Manning. He's a pretty big-bodied guy. What do y'all like about him?
I think he's like a really just smooth athlete overall. He moves pretty good laterally, good in a straight line. He can jump very well, very bursty, and it shows up on the field too. He wins contested situations. He's really just poaching on these smaller corners because he's 6'3", I believe, just under 200 pounds. Proficient basketball player. He has some pretty nice dunks that David showed me. Especially going to Missouri, I think he's going to have a pretty defined role there. They don't really have too many other guys like him, coming in with these next recruits. They just got Marquise Johnson, another freakless guy in the 23 class, but he's more of like the smaller, straight line, deep threat guy. Where I feel like Manning's going to be more of the intermediate guy. So I like his potential future there at Missouri.
Yeah, I think he's a decent compliment to Burden. Like, I think he'll be a good red zone. Like, obviously, he's on the freak list. His jumps are insane. I think he jumped over like 24 feet and triple jumped like over 46 feet, I think it was. And he's already pushing nearly 200 pounds. So that's pretty freaky, obviously. I didn't see a whole lot of route running at this point, which I don't know, whatever. He's a junior in high school. A lot of these guys aren't very refined at this point. So that's something we'll have to look at and see if he progresses and see what kind of trajectory he's on. So we'll watch him his senior year and hopefully he gets better. But he can contribute even if he doesn't, just because he can out athlete a lot of guys too.
Yeah, that's a wide open receiver room for the most part. Not a lot of competition going to Missouri. Obviously, Burden was a huge coup for them. He grew up in East St. Louis, so there was the backyard connection. But Manning could step into some meaningful production, especially if he develops like you think he can, especially with his athleticism. Tight end, Jackson Bowers, unrelated to Brock, as far as I know. I tried to confirm earlier. I did not see anything in terms of relation. 4-star kid committed to BYU. That's a team that likes to use the tight end. Extensively deployed Isaac Rex. What do we think about his potential? He was at the Elite 11. Sell me on him.
Yeah, I got to see him in person. He's a really big kid. one of the media members joked around about how he looked like a one tech because he put on a lot of weight and it didn't necessarily look like great weight. Like he looked pretty chubby, but he still moved really well for being kind of chubby. Once he gets into a college program, like it's fine though. Like he's probably 245 already. So like he'll get into the weight room, he'll lose some of that baby fat and add muscle. And he's there. I read an article about how they like deemed him he plays like a psycho. I don't know. He just plays really aggressive. I watched some of his tape. He loves to block. He's decent after the catch. Like he's gonna break a lot of tackles. He has pretty good production already on the high school level. I kind of like him. And BYU, yeah, like you said, they like to use tight ends. They always have like a decent tight end. I don't know if he's going on. Everyone always wants to ask, like, is he going on a 2-year mission? I didn't see anything about that. So
He's not.
he's not.
He's
Okay.
deferring his. Yep.
So there we go.
I did a little bit of research before the show. I'm not the recruiting guru, but I know a thing or two.
So that's good for us. So I don't know. He's physically ready to go. Like, probably not like they have a bunch of guys right now, like Isaac Rex and all that, but I guess he'll probably graduate after this year. I know they got somebody else. I can't think of his name right now. But anyways, he in year 2 probably he can probably get on the field and do some stuff.
I'm going to disagree with David here slightly. I was not liking the Powers film at all. He looks like, a really clunky mover to me. He's running his routes in slow motion. All of his, he does have some nice pancake blocks, but he's slamming down 160-pound DBs. Like he's barely doing that much work at the line. He looks like he does have really long arms, which is cool, but he looked woefully unathletic to me. So maybe it looked a little different in person. Especially if he's moving better with an added weight, like you said. But with the film I watched, I was not very impressed at all.
Yeah. To be clear, I don't think he's
like an NFL guy.
Yeah, to be clear, I was going to say I don't think he's an NFL guy, but at BYU, they're going to be playing against bad teams, so he might do all right.
CFF production, I think he definitely could step up there, but don't see any NFL upside personally.
All right, big dude, potentially chubby, pancakes box some DBs. Got it. Great scouting report. Nathan Leacock, who is a 3-star wide receiver, just committed to Tennessee. I believe of all the guys we're going to talk about tonight, he is the lowest in the composite by a good amount. What do y'all like about him?
Leacock's been my sleeper since right when I started looking into this class, and I was just he put up. I think what initially stood out for me was he had really good numbers that popped up in my model, which then lends me to checking him out before a lot of guys. And he's very long. He can play inside or outside. He played mostly slot last year, but he was also teammates with Wesley Grimes, the now Wake Forest wide receiver, and even playing second fiddle to him, he still put up a 1,000-yard season. He looked very, very good. He's like you watch his tape in the first 2-3 minutes, or him catching just long deep balls for touchdowns, and that's something I like to see, obviously. But he's not the most refined, but there's definitely a lot of traits there that I do like a lot. And he obviously got the bag going to Tennessee, so I love that for him.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I haven't watched a ton of him yet. I watched a little of him before the show. He looked like a good deep threat. He's really athletic. I did find a clip of him doing a backflip, which is pretty cool. But so he's very athletic, and his production doesn't look amazing, just because he was playing alongside Wesley Grimes. For people that don't know, he was the Wake Forest commit for the last class. So I mean, it's not surprising. Like he was a year ahead of him, so he should be better. But I think he's primed for a big year and probably a rankings bump following his senior year season.
That's a good guy good name to keep an eye on. Big guy too. I mean, he's 6'3", 195. So I think I potentially like him paired up with Caleb Webb there. That could be a sick combination for that offense. And like you said, they're paying dudes. So if they're paying him, it becomes a lot more interesting to see his 3-star compared to what Tennessee might evaluate him as. So that's a neat sleeper. I like that call. The next on the list was Walker Lyons. He's a dude who's going on a 2-year mission. He is a very high-end 4-star tight end committed to Stanford. How much does the mission impact you? I mean, does this player even matter considering they're going on a 2-year mission at this point?
I definitely think it matters for sure because if you're drafting him this year, you're gonna have to hold him and wait on that potential. And but overall as a player, I really like Lyons. He's probably top 5 tight end for me just in talent. He moves really good. He's a really good receiver. He's blocked. He's just really very well rounded overall. And I think that can lend him to eventually being Stanford's top guy. But unfortunately, he's going to get drafted late because he's old, and you're going to have to wait the 2 years to finally get production out of him of any sort. So, it's obviously disappointing, from our perspective, from how he's going to produce for our fantasy teams. But I do think he could definitely be a guy drafted, maybe even day 2. Like he is a very talented player.
I agree with that. He is smooth. He's like a little bit worse version of like an Oscar Delp, something like that. He's and Stanford, they do well with tight ends. Like Eurosec is pretty good. Obviously, they had Austin Hooper and some other guys.
Kobe Fleener.
And, Kobe Fleener. So like David Shaw, he's got this pro style offense that just never changes, and there's going to be 2 tight ends on the field a lot of the time, and like so whenever he's on with this mission, like he's a guy that will definitely produce. And yeah, I could see him getting day 2 draft capital at some point.
He's a stash, wait and see type guy. Sounds like. But if he's talented, I mean, he's a guy that you probably want to be taking in leagues. Just keep it at the very end of your bench. Just keep an eye on him. Obviously, y'all think he's a good player. Diminutive back, Javon Simpkins, borderline 4-star, commits to Georgia Tech. He's a smaller guy, 5'8", 175. But I assume if he's on this list and he's a 4-star, he's probably pretty electric. So what's the deal with him?
I like Simpkins to a certain extent. He moves very good laterally, and he's very bursty. You can see him. He's shaking people out. He's spinning around people. He's got he moves like a point guard almost in that way, but he doesn't move very fast in a straight line, which I don't love. And his junior tape, I think it was only 4 games, wasn't very impressive. He only had 2-3 big plays, and the rest of him are just picking up 5-yard chunks. He doesn't do very well in contact, as you would expect at that smaller size. And the odds of him getting over 200 pounds pretty low. So that's he's probably not going to be a guy you're looking at for future NFL upside. But at Georgia Tech, they might feed him, and if he becomes a bad guy there. I know they're still looking at a couple other guys like Darrell Robinson in this class. This guy, I'm pretty sure Georgia Tech would be going after pretty heavy, and he's more of the standard, every down back. He's more, I think he's 200 pounds, maybe just under. He's more of a physical guy. But even if he doesn't end up going there, I'm not sure if I love Simpkins' potential to be the lead back there, just because obviously the size, the long speed. But he's definitely a fun guy with just how he can move.
Yeah, I think his size is kind of a hindrance, and also, I don't know, Georgia Tech. I just don't get a lot of confidence in that. They don't seem to recruit offensive line very well, for one thing. Jeff Collins, I don't know. I don't know how long he'll stay there. I'm surprised he's back for another year, to be honest. I think this guy might just not be a good head coach at all. And they just hired Dell Alexander too, which, I mean, he can't be a smart guy if he's doing that. He was a wide receiver coach at Notre Dame. The guy was dreadful, absolutely dreadful. Couldn't develop. I know that's a wide receiver position, but it just goes to show Jeff Collins is a decision maker. That whole program, I just like to stay away from it, to be honest. So size wise and landing spot wise, I mean, he might be a decent player. I am not interested.
Tell me how you really feel about the Tech program. That's
fair. That's fair.
Yeah, no, that's all fair. I would also be surprised if Collins lasted any time after this season. I think that he's just a sitting duck at this point. To I guess it's lame duck, not quite sitting duck, but he might be both, considering they're probably going to get trounced throughout the year. Last player, also a running back, also borderline 3-4 star, Cameron Cook commits to TCU. I don't know anything about this dude. Do we like him? Do we think that he has potential to step into what could be a productive offense? I think Sonny Dykes is doing some really interesting things there.
Yeah, I think he's landing in a good situation because of the offense, and they haven't, they got one running back in the 22 class in New Age, Everhart, but he's, Cook isn't huge by any means. I think he's 180, and Everhart's 170, but Everhart at least is really high in speed. Cook, he's really good moving laterally. He's very bursty. Again, like Simpkins, doesn't move, that fast in a straight line. Doesn't have that good of, working through contact. And he looked like a decent receiver, but I think he only had 10 catches last year, so I haven't seen that much of receiving upside. I just find it unlikely he's the next workhorse for them at running back. If they don't get anybody else in this class, they'll probably grab a transfer. So I'm not liking, his potential college output there. And, NFL upside wise, he's not that big and he's not that fast. So as we just saw with the charts, that's something NFL, at least they care about the speed a lot. So.
Yeah, I think you had him at sub 19 miles per hour or something, which.
Oh, did I? I don't even know.
Yeah. If you're sub 200 and sub 20 miles per hour, I don't know. It's just, I don't know if there's enough there to like, and he's not that, he's pretty small. I think he just gets lost in the shuffle at TCU. I don't know.
I think he was originally committed to Utah State. I think that if I were him, I'd consider decommitting and changing his line there.
Yeah, that sounds like it might be more his speed, quite literally, actually. Those were the big commitments. Is there anyone that y'all wanted to touch on that we didn't bring up today?
That's it for me.
Yeah, did you want to touch on Jaden Greathouse?
Oh, yeah, we can talk about Greathouse. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's probably important, right?
Yeah.
A high
that's
four-star.
one. Yeah, that's one that we missed when he committed. So
high 4-star going Notre Dame, 6'2", 220, great receiver, very well liked among the Campus Canton community. Sell me on him. Tell me what y'all like about him. He's David's going to David's school, so let's hear it.
I mean, I could come from a biased perspective here, but I'm pretty hard on Notre Dame as a Notre Dame fan. Like, I'll tell you straight up if I like a guy or not. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't like Braylon James. I don't really love Rico Flores, but I do like Jaden Greathouse. He's not the fastest guy. I think he's fast enough though, but he's probably one of the more polished route runners, I feel like, in this class. And he's already like so physically developed, he doesn't really have to do much else. So one thing I wanted to bring up is that ESPN just redid their rankings and they have him listed as a tight end, which, I mean, I get that he's like 220 and he's got like a big frame and all that. And like, he could be like one of those guys that just like keeps growing and he hits the weights and just keeps getting bigger. But like, I don't know. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll stay at wide receiver. And I like him quite a bit. He performed really well and had great production in like the toughest league in Texas. And he put up over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns in the championship win with him and Klubnik. So, I mean, he's obviously super talented.
Yeah, going off what you said, I would actually argue that he's the most refined receiver in this class live watched. He's amongst the top 100 wide receivers or so. So his work at the line, his breaks, just everything. It's as good as you'd want to see it from a recruit. He's not. He kind of breaks the mold for the Notre Dame wide receiver because he's not an uber athlete by any means. He's a decent athlete. I think I got him at 20.1 miles per hour, 19.8, I think, maybe around there. Either way, not anything special, but good enough. And he's pretty big anyway. So I'd like to see him drop weight. I don't think he's going to play tight end there. We haven't seen any rumors coming out from anywhere that he's going to play tight end other than just ESPN suddenly ranking him at tight end, which is weird. I don't really understand it. Yeah, I mean, Great House, I think he's going to be a consensus top 5 wide receiver for the C2C crew and a guy that I really like.
Yeah, I've seen nothing but praise in our Discord. I know Austin likes him a lot as well. This is someone that we are all universally very intrigued with. So that wraps it up for the show tonight. Again, I'm filling in for Alfred this week. You can find everything I do at Chris Moxley19 on Twitter. Obviously, you already know Matt at Big Wide Receiver Guy. You already know David at Solving Football. Everything we do is found at campuscanton.com, Campus Canton YouTube. Become a member. Join our Discord. We're talking about these players. We're talking about the impact that they're going to have as commits. A lot of great discussions happening over there. So come join us, hang out, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to get just great content and more content like this.